Good morning, everyone. So happy that you could make it today. Today we're going to have our Sunday school lesson on Psalm 23, verse 5. The last couple of weeks we've covered Psalm 23, verse 1 through 3. Then last week Mr. Larry did Psalm 23, verse 4. And today we're going to do Psalm 23, verse 5. Last time that I taught, I requested some artwork that I could use on the slides for our presentation. And it got some artwork sent in by Hannah Brown. So you'll notice today that all of our artwork has been provided by Hannah. Hannah, this is fantastic work. Thank you so much. And I hope that we can get some artwork from some of our other students in the weeks going forward, so that we can keep on making these beautiful slides. All right. So without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and get into our lesson. What I'd like to first do is just do a quick review on what is a psalm. So what is a psalm? Psalm's a song or a poem that was written for the purpose of worshiping God, and most of the psalms were written by King David. You guys remember King David? He's David and Goliath fame. He was the second king of Israel, Solomon's son, Solomon's father. He was was going to bring back the temple, and however, God told him he wouldn't be able to build the temple, but his son Solomon built it. You know, a lot of probably one of the most famous figures from the Bible is David. He was a true master of a lot of things. He was a great warrior, a great king, and we see that he was a poet or songwriter, as he wrote many of these psalms, and so the psalms that he wrote reflected all the range of emotions. There would be grief and sadness, and sometimes there would be joy and gladness. But basically what they do is tell us that no matter how we feel, that that we still need to worship God, because God is still worthy of being praised. So this 23rd Psalm is probably the most famous psalm that there is, and we're breaking it down kind of one verse at a time, one or two verses at a time. So we'll go now to Psalm 23:5. It says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows." All right, so we'll do some discussion here on what we just read. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. I'm going to break that down into basically two different discussion topics. So the first one that we'll talk about is the first half. So what do we think that David means when he writes, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies"? So I want you to think about that and maybe take a minute or two, talk with your mom or dad, your brother or sister, or whomever that you're watching this video with, and then I'll put us on pause. Then I'll come back and tell you what I think and some things that I learned while I was preparing this lesson. All right, that's great. I hope you had a good conversation. So here's basically what I learned. So we want to think about, in the previous verse, David praises God for keeping him safe in the valley of death. So now David is praising God for providing for him while his enemies are watching on and are unable to harm him. So David escaped the death in the valley of the death, and now he's gotten to safety. The Lord has provided safety for him, but not only has he provided safety for him, but he's laid out a big spread, a big table or a feast to provide for David. And also, I think we'll see in the next half of this that it's not only the provision or giving David what he needs, food and drink, but there's also a celebration part of that. So without waiting on that, let's look at the next part. It says, we have you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. And then the next part we're going to talk about is you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. So we'll go to our discussion, and the question is, what does David mean when he writes, you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows? So again, I'm going to give you a minute or two, a couple minutes, talk amongst yourselves, talk with your family and friends, and then I'll pick back up, and there is definitely some things that I learned here that I want to share with you. Okay. All right. So the question out there, hope you had some chance to discuss it. What does David mean when he writes, "You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows"? There are two meanings that I learned here. There are two meanings to the first part of this. You anoint my head with oil. The first one, anointing in oil was done to celebrate at a great feast. A host would put a nice smelling oil on the guest's head. This was a customary thing to do when you were having a great feast or a celebration. That's why I said in the previous verse that we talked about what did it mean to have the table there, that God was not only providing the provisions or the things that David needed, but also that there was a celebratory part of it, and that's what one of the two meanings are. And then the second part is that there are some Bible translations that rather than saying oil will say ointment. And if we remember back to the whole metaphor about this 23rd Psalm, it is the Lord is my shepherd. So the Lord is the shepherd here, and we are his sheep. And so when the Bible translations say ointment, there are some Bible scholars or people who study the Bible that think that one of the meanings here is that the shepherds often had an ointment. When the sheep were injured, they had gotten a cut or a scrape or something along those lines, that the shepherd would take the ointment and put it on the wound to help it heal. So if we look at that, we can say, there are two meanings here in the same first part of this verse. You anoint my head with oil, so the oil would be done as part of the celebration, as part of the feast that we had in the first half of the verse, but also it would be that God is taking care of David, though he may be wounded. Remember, he's coming out of the valley of death. He's there being provided by God with a table, with a feast. But he also may have some wounds or some injuries or maybe some hurt feelings or something along those lines that God is taking care of here by putting the ointment on there. Then there's one last little part here, which isn't so little, it has a lot of meaning. It says, my cup overflows. And when it says my cup overflows, that means that God is providing more than David needs. That if you're drinking a cup, we can put into that cup all that you can drink, right? But then if your cup is overflowing, you're putting in more than the cup can even hold on to, and that's what God is doing here. He's given so much goodness, so much abundance. Remember, he's given us the green pastures to lie down in, and the still waters so that we can eat and drink and be provided for and provided security for as we walk through he leads our paths, so he puts us on the right path and keeps us going from places where as sheep we may be hurt or something along those lines. And then he delivers us from the valley of death as we saw last week. But then he provides again for us with a great feast and a celebration, and takes us as the little sheep and 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 nurses and heals us back to get together again. So there's a lot going on here. It's a wonderful picture, and I hope that you're getting a lot out of this. Like I say, this is it's a short psalm. We'll be finished with it in a week or two, but there's a lot there. David said a whole lot of stuff that he was thanking God for in this psalm. It's very, very powerful. Okay, so having said all of that, we're going to go to the end. I want to do a very special thank you again to Hannah for the artwork in today's lesson. I think this is the best looking slideshow that we've had, best looking PowerPoint. So I want to ask you guys again, please send your artwork to Miss Martha, and here's her email address right down below, marthayanitz@gmail.com. So if you have any artwork that you've done for school that you're holding on to, or maybe you have an art project while you're doing school at home, or you just have some time lying around, while we don't have a whole lot of things to do and places to go, that you would be able to put together some art. It does not have to be anything related to the 23rd Psalm. It can be, anything. If you have some pictures of, football players or transformers or whatever it is that you like to draw and paint and do art stuff for, it doesn't have to be painting. If you, have some Play-Doh and you make some sculptures or something like that, if you can take some pictures and send them to me, I want to incorporate those into our lessons as we go on. So again, I want to thank you. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you and your parents for taking the time out to see these lessons. And I want to just tell you that I'm praying for each and every one of you, and I hope that God will continue to bless us all until we can be together.